All right, digging through the crates of receipts, and let's talk about what I found. So right here it says this is a book, researchers, philosophical inquiry, blah 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 blah. Right, came out in the 1800s, early 18, I think it's like 1829, something like that. Okay. It says, hey, the tradition given by the Natchez of Duprats would be a voyager that came to America. And he had a voyage in the history of Louisiana. That's the name of his voyage or his book, History of Louisiana by Duprats. But okay, relate that their ancient enemies by whom they had been compelled to immigrate to Louisiana lived in a great number of large and small villages which were built of stone, in which there were houses large enough to lodge a whole village. Their temples were built with great labor and art, and they made beautiful works of all kinds of materials. So you got to think about this. This is Louisiana. Now to you, you think this is Louisiana. Well, it is today, but just in 1757, this was Louisiana. Hard to read, right? Let me help you. That's Virginia and Carolina going that way. Florida would be that way. This is the Gulf of Mexico. Louisiana is what you think this area is right here. But as you can see, it says Louisiana, which is all it is. Okay, parts of Texas, parts of this, parts of that. Now, Florida really used to be a lot of that, but it just depends on the years. But this was one point a Louisiana area. And here they have saying that the ancient people built houses with stone large enough to lodge a whole village. Now, what structures in America are built out of stone that we know of today that can be large enough to house an entire village? Like an apartment complex, an ancient apartment complex built of stone. Now, I could speculate for you, but I could also show you another book of the history of the conquest of Mexico down there in the 1700s. Okay, now they went to Mexico and look at the buildings they saw. Let's get a little closer. These are the stone building structures. Now, these are Indians in every single one of these windows, all along here, all along there, all along them windows. Getting a little bit closer there, look how they drew the detail in the here, large enough to house a whole village, stone structures. And when you get in really, really, really close, it looks like a cartoon from some of, today's time. Melanated folks in there inside the building. And when we jump back out, so now you can get a good look at the steeples, look at all that, right? Look at the design. All right. Now that was in Mexico. I don't know what happened to those buildings. They might still be around. What stone building structures are around in Louisiana or any of that large, vast area of Louisiana that could house whole villages? Well, I would say there's an awful lot of stone structured buildings that are kind of unexplained out there all over that area that were built maybe like in 1902 to 1903, 2 to 1 year time spans, that a ginormous amount of Roman structures just popped up by YT folks out of nowhere, and then they went to making boxes. Modern things, right? One would say these were large enough to house a village. Wouldn't you say? Look at the steeples. I remember seeing that in Mexico, didn't I? Large enough to hold villages. Now you'll say, hey, Sam, stop all that goddamn speculation, right? Well, I would say, well, another account of a person says, hey, the habitation of the cacique, which would be the chief, the king, the man with all the bread, the man that everybody looks up to, right? Built upon the mound. So the habitations of the caciques were built upon the mound, was larger and more commodious than the huts of the people, but not otherwise materially different in construction. Now that's talking about some huts or whatever, but okay. They say the Portuguese gentleman, though, who accompanies Soto, describes the houses of the chiefs in certain parts of the present state of Alabama to have had porticos to their doors. Porticos. Well, these are porticos. When you Google porticos, porticos are the porch-like structure with columns that you see. Now, that's why I said I know they said huts, right? But what kind of hut has porticos? Why would they explain porticos? And why is America full of porticos, which are the precursor to porches, which are mostly an American thing? Well, that's another thing that has porticos. Plantations. Lots of plantations. They all seem to have column-like porch structures, right? All over the South. All over your so-called Louisiana area. And the present-day Alabama area, which would be around right here, as they're talking about in that particular receipt. The other ones just said Louisiana. That could be anywhere around y'all. I mean, so I don't know. What other stone structures could they have saw that were large enough to house an entire village? And where did they go? I mean, you could say they destroyed them. So they came, destroyed all the stone buildings, destroyed all the old world buildings after they built them up, then built up some new state capitals. Boy, they was some building people without a whole lot of construction, without cars like that, and trucks and cranes and power tools and leveling equipment and lasers and anyway, I'm gonna let you just believe what you want to believe. I'm just throwing it out there to you. If it says it in these books and these voyagers are saying, hey, I see these things. I see stone structures large enough to house buildings. Or he says that the Indian told them that the ancient people built stone structures large enough to house entire villages. And then also in the book of Mexico, the conquest of Mexico, they got somebody who drew stone structures large enough to house entire villages. Now, you may think that we shouldn't have these Roman-looking like buildings. We're not no Romans, right? Well, in that same 1700 time, the Germans were painting Americans as melanated, woolly-haired people that look like this. Or some that look like this guy with a red cotton mantle over one shoulder like a toga. Roman-like. And it says America right there. Here's another one. She has a blue cotton mantle draped over one shoulder, toga-like, with her feathers and all that. Or even on this map of America, I think this is like 1700-ish or whatever, where they got these people up here. Kind of toga style. Kinda. You know? So, hey, I'm just showing you the receipts. I'm explaining them too, but I'm showing them to you. So believe what you will, but who else built that shit? Quit playing.